everyone, welcome to another Animation Friday, and today I thought it would be interesting to briefly address, in particular, animated movie sequels. Yes, I thought this would be an interesting topic because animated sequels, I think, are fairly common. And the interesting thing about animated sequels is usually, for the most part, I think more so than live action, they're actually considered of lower quality um, than the first film that came out that was animated before it. Um, that again revolves around the same characters, maybe a similar storyline. It just doesn't hold a whole lot of water. Now, I think the biggest exceptions that you can make when it comes to animated films, as far as their quality is concerned, is probably the Shrek sequel, meaning Shrek 2, which I actually think was superior to the first film, and also Toy Story, that made two sequels actually. That I think the second one and the third one were actually better than the first film, even though the first film is really good too. So it's just one of those things. There's sort of more of an extreme. It's either it's really good, maybe even better than the original, or it's really bad. And usually this is kind of scaled this way, so to speak. So there's more bad than there are probably good. And I think there's a variety of reasons for this. And I'm going to kind of go into sort of my reasonings into why initially, once animation was kind of getting off the ground and, when Walt Disney was alive, why there really weren't any necessarily sequels, so to speak. There was always some kind of original idea, maybe tied in with similar concepts like, how Make Mine Music is kind of like Fantasia, so to speak. Um, you know, it still tries to be something different, despite maybe the similarities between the films. It doesn't try to be a sequel or spin-off of anything. But once we enter into sort of the early 2000s, is I think when we saw a real surgence of emphasizing a sequel, and having that sort of be included within the animation or part of the animated sort of storyline. For example, we got the Disney sequels were probably the first, and I'd say the Disney sequels are probably the reason why Disney probably um, went down as far as quality is concerned, because they had their fun little high in the 90s, and then once computer generation came in, they were like, oh, we'll just buy out Pixar, no problem, and they'll make our films. So that's kind of something that I think ultimately happened with Disney is that they got just too lazy, and I think that's the one reason why these sequels were sort of hashed out. But we see sort of what Pixar is sort of doing today is actually similar to what Disney did within the 90s. They did make sequels, Pixar, like Cars 2, which was largely a complete mess for the most part, and again, totally unnecessary. Planes 2, again, why would they make a sequel to an already um, low critically acclaimed, and I mean really low, like like Rotten Tomatoes low, film, a sequel, makes no sense, but they did. And there's also other films that actually, that are not of the Pixar Disney lineup. For example, again, Shrek sequels, perfect example. Um, as far as Train Your Dragon 2 is concerned, I don't know if that's better than the first film. I've probably, it's kind of like with usually DreamWorks, it's usually their films just kind of remain the same. or they just get fairly worse, like they did with some of the Shrek sequels. But you know, except for the second one. But really, this sequels thing hasn't really emerged until really when we started seeing the Disney sequels. Um, and we also saw some straight to DVD work that again didn't really get recognized, didn't really get significantly praised. So, but there was, I think, this desire to pump out as much as they could out of what they were making already from the films. Um, for example, John Bluth's film Secret of NIMH, although I think that film is still a little bit overlooked now, back in the day it would probably make sense for him to make a sequel, even though, again, not even close to on par of the quality of the first film. Uh, the Ice Age sequels. Why did they need to make sequels to the Ice Age movies? And again, all based on trying to milk. These usually end up being more of the milking kinds of films. They don't usually, very rarely, with again those few exceptions that I mentioned, like Shrek 2 and the Toy Story sequels, um, maybe some other little side DreamWorks projects. Usually animated film sequels don't have the same amount of they just don't have the same amount of quality. They don't have the same amount of effort put into them as the original first film. Um, and and again, I think largely has to do with the cash grab. They know that the first film was a success, so they will make follow-ups to it, or they'll see that people did like it and they'll make a sequel to it, but not put a significant amount of effort because they know that they'll still get a return on their investment because people will still go and see it because of the first film. And I think I think also too the reason why you can get away with this more as far as making your sequels within animation not as good. I think largely that comes from the fact that it's their market, it's the kids. They know the parents don't know any better when it comes to kids films, and the parents will just grab whatever's off the shelf and just give it to their kids and be like, yeah, just go watch it, yeah, okay. I mean, that's what my parents did. They did that for me when I was a kid because they thought, hey, you liked the first film, you should like the second film, no problem. Yeah, because we trust Disney, or we trust this filmmaker or whatnot. But again, and I think that's the idea is kids don't know better, they'll still watch it, they'll still enjoy it. So I think that's something that I think is very unfortunate, and I think definitely we should start taking children a little bit more seriously. And I think doing so, we need to produce better filmmaking um, that is a little bit more on the, adult side in the sense of treating kids like adults. But unfortunately, a lot of that time that doesn't happen with the sequels because they already made their money off the first one. They don't need to try for the second film. It's just they know their demographic doesn't know better, which is unfortunate. And I think is definitely not nice to do. And the thing is too that I think also comes with the idea of having money is this notion of laziness too. Like, they put so much thought and time, into the first film. They're probably burnt out, so it's like, okay, we'll just half-ass the second film. And to be honest, I don't think that works. I think you definitely need to at least try if you're going to make a film. Um, And I just see a lot of the ones that end up getting made into sequels, and you could just tell that they were just side projects. You know, they really there wasn't really a they weren't really at the forefront. And I think that's, again, this has to do with money and, laziness. Um, and the thing too is what I did appreciate about when Walt Disney was alive and when the animation was going on in its development around when Walt Disney was really the only company that was around, was because, they didn't really allow for this kind of, sequel notion to get into play. Because Walt wasn't the sort of person to make sequels. I don't think he liked the idea, and I think it's good reason that he never made one throughout his entire career. And I think it just only makes sense, because he saw that it was just based around money, and he didn't want his films just to be based around dollar value. Um, and again, like he even says with the concept of Disneyland too, no, we didn't just make it just so that we could make money. Um, Unfortunately, Disney has definitely changed over the years, and you could say that their approach is a lot more corporate than it used to be. And that's just the way that it goes, because they made so much money off of their 90s works that and their parks that it went pretty much to the top. And I don't think we'll ever see Disney go broke. Not in a million years. Um, so again, it's also another thing too when you're running out of ideas and when your juice is sort of dying out. I can understand this if you're having a huge amounts of success. For example, it's the same with Disney within the 90s, when they started to get, kind of, they're not updating with the times, to doing computer generated work, they're, or at least good quality computer generated work, they're not putting the same amount of effort on the stories or the characters or none of that. They're not really staying true to their brand. They're really flopping. They're running out of ideas and they're running out of fuel and energy. Um, and again, it's just how companies work. You have your highs and then you have your lows. Um, and they were just running low on ideas of what to do. And then along comes Pixar and it's like, hey, we got all these cool new ideas. Let's use them. And then Disney buys them and says, yeah, do that for us, please. And then Pixar does a really good job for a while. And then, as we are seeing lately, they haven't been churning out the same quality products that they have been churning out. So it just goes to show that these things kind of go within a cycle. And I think usually when you start seeing sequels appear is usually when you start seeing the problems. I think once the Disney sequels came in, there were problems for Disney. And once the sequels came in with the announcement of Cars 2, I think that set definitely Pixar on a spiral. And again, Planes 2, like they've completely gone out of the sort of market, so to speak, when it comes to animated films. And Disney's been topping them now. They've been coming, and Disney Animated Studio came back, and now we're seeing them finally making quality. But what I think is really going to screw this up again, and this is a point that I kind of wanted to bring up because it was a topic that was trending constantly over social media, and that was this Frozen 2 announcement. I could not believe it when they announced it that they were making a Frozen 2. Now, this I think is a blatant cash grab from Disney. This is not something that they've exploited this film enough. Like, I have never seen in my life a film like Frozen getting so much hype. I mean, there have been good films out there that have gotten a decent amount of exposure, okay? I'll admit Forrest Gump did get a restaurant. But you didn't see merchandise constantly. You didn't see everybody trying to shove the film in your face. You didn't see kids trying to mimic the songs. You didn't try, and the thing is too is it has that kind of new corporate label surrounding it too, with just, oh, how smiley and how happy it is and yay, You know, it's just so superficial and fake, that it just bothers me to no end. And the fact that they are trying to now suck it dry for what it's worth, just really bothers me. And what bothers me too is I don't, again, Frozen doesn't need a sequel unless you want to actually go into maybe some explanations, like if you make it a prequel, so to speak, where maybe they have their childhood or something. Like there maybe could be some potential there. Um, but see, the thing is I don't think they're gonna do that. Why? Because people like to be pandered to, and so they're gonna pander to the people and the masses who consider Frozen to be, you know, the best thing since I don't know, since we were able to, you know, filter our water. I don't know, you know, just, you know, like a life necessity, so to speak. Um, you know, because you know, you need to have clean water, otherwise when you drink it, you know, tons of bacteria and all that stuff. I mean, it just goes to show, like, this is just designed to get people riled up so that the film will still be continued to be talked about when it doesn't need to be talked about anymore. And where Disney should start going into and finding other ideas and, you know, channeling their creativity so they can be still maintain that top level seat. And I think what they're doing is they know that they're going to make a lot of money off it. And they know that they don't need to put a whole lot of effort into it. And again, see, the thing is too is with even with the first film Frozen, I didn't think it was the strongest of Disney's works. I honestly thought Wreck-It Ralph and Tangled were a lot stronger. Better character development, better story, you know, better characters, you know, just overall better films. Do I think that they deserve sequels? No, I don't think they are necessary. And again, this is just goes to show, you know, the Frozen film, the only reason they're making a sequel for this is because it made so much money. It's because it got so much attention and so much exposure from the masses that everybody's going to go out and see it because of the hype surrounding it. And again, if they have some intelligence behind it, I would probably get behind the idea of possibly if they were to do a prequel, if Frozen 2 was designed to be a prequel where they actually do develop stuff that they didn't do, then okay, all right, justifiable. Why didn't you do that in the first film to begin with? Which is stupid. So yeah, it's just one of those things where I don't think they're gonna go the intelligent route. This is going to be a dumbed down, um, unnecessary, unnecessary sequel, an unnecessary, idea. I mean, the fact that they're titling it Frozen 2 just tells you that they don't have any creativity in them. Like why would you title it Frozen 2 just because it's the second film? Like, are kids so dumb now that, you know, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference if this was a Frozen 2 or a Frozen 1? Since pretty much every kid probably on the planet has seen Frozen? Like, what are these people kidding themselves? And it just bothers me because, again, it's for the sake of money. It's the desire for more money. They want your dollar. Disney wants your dollar. Parents out there, they want your money. And to be honest, I think that they're just using Frozen as this whole marketing scheme to keep people talking about it so that it'll stay relevant and so that people will buy more crap that they don't need for their kids. Like, you don't need to buy them this stuff. It's so pointless. You don't need to buy any stuff. You don't need to buy them a Frozen, jumper or a Frozen, playhouse or whatever. It's just all it's all pointless junk. You're not teaching them anything. Give them a book or something. But it's all designed to be very consumeristic, especially from my personal viewpoint, especially when you slam Frozen out there in front of everybody and shove it in your face. I remember in the 90s they had maybe princess dolls or things like that, but I've never seen it hyped or as explosive as Frozen. Not in the marketing department. And I think, again, it suffers from that sort of Lucas syndrome of, creating a bunch of toys for people to buy, instead of really creating a good product, which I don't think really Disney did with Frozen. I think they did an okay job. Again, not the worst animated film, definitely not, but not the best, not the strongest. I mean, and the fact that they're making a sequel out of this just goes to show you that, again, it's all based around who makes the most dollar value and who gains the most traction. And Frozen did that. So it only makes sense. It only makes sense from a business standpoint, a marketing standpoint, and a film standpoint and a money standpoint to make this film. Because, well, actually, anything but a film standpoint, excuse me. Because as far as a film goes, you really got nothing to go with unless you try to somehow make a prequel. But I don't know how you can make a prequel and call it Frozen 2. That just makes no sense. At least to me, it doesn't. So yeah, it's unintelligent, it's uninspiring, it's just there for the sake of making more money. And I'm sick of it, and I'm tired of hearing about Frozen. Hardy enough. And if you want to watch a more extended viewpoint on my understanding of Frozen, you can watch my Overrated Film Saturday, where I discuss how I think Frozen as a film is overrated. But yeah, we'll see what ultimately the sequel does for Disney. Who knows? It might make them a lot of money. Maybe they won't receive any backlash for it, and everybody just goes along thinking Frozen is the best thing out there. Even though I definitely don't think it's the best thing out there, not even close. When you look at the film, it's just standard. It's standard. It's standard pandering Disney, and it doesn't challenge its audience at all or tries to create a good story out of it. So yeah, I think that's just something that really really bothered me this week, and why I felt like it should be sort of part of this animated film sequels thing, because now we're sort of getting a sequel announced to be a part of the sort of sequel ism that has been occurring. But we'll see if it goes back into that traditional cycle of what we've seen with animated film companies, where they have their high, and then once they have their high, they make their sequels, and then it all goes downhill from there. I think ultimately, I hope this doesn't happen to Disney. I really don't. I hope this sequel doesn't do anything to damper the ability for them to make other films that I think would actually be more enjoyable to watch. But from the patterns that I've seen happen, like, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. And I think they're probably going to repeat it again. And then we'll see them basically where Pixar is. And who knows, maybe DreamWorks will top them, because they're making the good films, whereas, Disney decided to go into Sequelville for the sake of going into Sequelville. DreamWorks has done it too. Again, I'm not going to act like DreamWorks is somehow better than Disney, or that Disney is somehow better than DreamWorks. I think they're both interesting companies, but again, it seemed like they didn't try to make the sequel a huge deal. And if they did, they only did it a couple of times. And even then, they pretty much stayed standard. They didn't try to go further downhill. But they probably did, considering the Shrek films were the ones that a lot of people seemed to be bothered by. But again, they try not to, I think, pander too much when it comes to their sequels. But I think from the attention Frozen is getting, I think it's just pure pandering to the audience and to the young little girl female crowd. And I'm not falling for that crap. So yeah, I think that's just something that bothered me while uh, when I saw it sort of explode on Twitter. I just thought to myself, really? Why are people talking about this stuff? Like this it's so pointless. It's just a movie. But yeah, apparently they're making a sequel. But we'll see what ultimately ends up happening with it. Might be good, might be bad, who knows? Usually the majority of the time animated sequels do poorly. And they end up getting a lot of backlash, but who knows, maybe this one will be different. I think though that's really ultimately though all I can really say when it comes to Disney, or excuse me, animated film sequels in general. They're just one of those things that really just doesn't really work all too well. I mean, usually sequels in general don't really work out too well, but when you look at animated films and you look at as to how many there are, there's not really a huge amount compared to live action. Now, again, I think for sure in majority of cases, both live action and animated films, there's probably an equal distribution when it comes to the bad. Um, as far as the good is concerned, I think there's definitely a lot more live action sequels that have done better, um, or have somehow managed to at least be a decent follow-ups. For example, Terminator 2 is one of those sequels that seems to be considered to, or is considered to be superior to Terminator, although Terminator, the first film, was of good quality. I'm trying to think of other ones off the top of my head, but that was one in particular that I noticed. But yeah, I think usually, if you look at the library though, there's more live action films than there are animated films, so it only makes sense that you would have more bad and you would also have more good films to and sequels to choose from. So it only makes sense, but I think the only reason why, in particular, animated films sequels usually don't work out is because there's not a whole lot of heart and effort put into them, and usually when they're made when a company is doing really well and feel, and then as a result they go into a downward spiral. Um, but yeah, I think though that's really ultimately all I can say when it comes to this topic. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's you want to say that that there could be some good ones out there, which there are. It's not the majority, and usually in most cases they're only made for the sake of just making them to make more money. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'm more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. And again, feel free to check out my Overrated Film Saturday of Frozen, so you'll kind of understand where I'm coming from when it comes to that film. Um, and you would probably understand if you watched that video why I'm so enraged at the fact that they would make a sequel. I mean, any sequel of the other films would have probably enraged me in the same way, like a Tangled 2. Why would they need to make a Tangled 2? Wreck-It Ralph 2. Why would they need to make a Wreck-It Ralph 2? It wouldn't make any sense. But I know the only reason Frozen is getting a sequel, and to be honest, I think that's just stupid. Um, but yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you on the next video. Bye bye.